Welcome to Down Earth Astrology and Primal Girl Wellness. This is Miss Jenny, and I am your astrologer. This video today is for the October 28th, 2023 5-degree Taurus eclipse, and it is being presented to you on the 24th. For those of you, and boy, do we have an eclipse for you. For those of you who are reading this video, watching this video late, like at some point in the future, what is happening as I speak right now is that the entire world is basically on edge. Russia and Ukraine are still fighting, although reports are, as of last night, that Putin may have had a heart attack. There's something interesting. And so while that is still going on, apparently Hamas, a terrorist organization for the Palestinians, as they're described, has pissed off Bibi Netanyahu, who was, not exactly anybody's, idea of a good time either. And now Netanyahu is using this as an excuse to basically commit mass genocide. And for those of you who are about to call me an anti-Semite because I don't support this, yet, blah, 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 just stop it already. Wrong is wrong. Netanyahu's telling these people on the Gaza Strip, you have to leave before I send my ground forces in or you will be killed. And surprise, where exactly are they going to go? There's literally nowhere for them to go and no way to escape. So it's all theater on his end. And at the end of the day, always, always, always look at people's actions, not their words, right? So Netanyahu is not listening to anyone, and literally all forces around him, Saudi Arabia, Egypt, Iran, well, sometimes the United States, and a whole bunch of other people telling him to, like, back down, this is excessive, you're going too far, we see what you're doing, stop it. And he's not listening. And the problem here in the United States is that Biden, for whatever complicated relationship we have with Israel, the state of Israel, Biden, in his spineless way, is, we're 100% behind him no matter what they do, which is a really not great position to be in. Now, in life, we have those friends. Not everybody has these friends. Some of us have friends that, we know are problem children. They've just always been problem children. They're going to continue to be problem children, and sometimes they're just being assholes, but they are our friends or our family, and we feel like we need to support and defend them. But I will also tell you that for those of you who have friends and family that are that person, sometimes it's a good thing to step back and let them understand that wrong is wrong. Right? Some things are just indefensible. So this, my friends, is what we have going on under this 5 Taurus eclipse. So everyone is on edge, and it's tense. We're literally, everybody's in the back of our mind, and some of us in the forefront are looking at the real possibility that we may be heading into World War III thanks to these lunatics, which we shouldn't really be surprised by. Putin has strong Mars in his chart. Zelensky has strong Mars in his chart. Biden has strong Mars in his chart. I'm not sure about Netanyahu, but I'm pretty sure he does as well, and or Pluto, which basically means these guys are all warmongers, right? At heart, they're warriors or warmongers, but they'll never miss an opportunity to beat their chest and start a fight. When they have nuclear missiles and militaries at their disposal, these are not the people you want running around starting fights. So Biden, Mr. Slick Joe, Mr. Soft Shoe Joe, who, for all intents and appearances, would seem to come across as a peacemaker, in his chart, he has a very strong Mars. This man is as much of a warmonger as anybody else. And the concern, and listen, I may be wrong, this is just my opinion. My concern is that he's at the end of his career. He's attempted multiple times to become president. He only just won the candidacy this time because literally our options were him or Trump. And at this point, we would have voted a rock in the office before we would have voted Trump. So he kind of by default got the position of president, not because the entire country was so enamored with him. He's certainly not a Kennedy. In any event, with old guys like this, also to remember, along with ego, legacy. This is what's going on with Russia and Putin and the Ukraine. He wants to leave a legacy of reuniting the motherland, all the countries back together again. So that's what started his unwelcome invasion of the Ukraine, trying to bring them back into the fold. So Biden is no different. Biden wants to leave legacy because that's all he's got left, right? Unfortunately, this could be something that's factoring into his decision making, his thinking processes right now, which is pretty scary. So, and there's a lot of people across the globe, here in the United States and elsewhere, that are saying that what Netanyahu is doing is wrong, wrong, wrong. This has nothing to do with being anti-Semitic. This has everything to do with your ass is just wrong, buddy, wrong. But that's a conversation for another day. So let's take a look at the eclipse. Alrighty, Chuchi Pies, here is the chart of the eclipse. So you will see here, we have the sun opposing the moon, right? Now, this is an interesting configuration, and here's why. So the first thing is we've got the sun, Mercury, and Mars all tightly together in Scorpio, which is not a peaceful position for sure. And also, with Mercury and Mars, hot words and revenge, my friend, old hurts and hot words are common with this because Scorpio is a vindictive sign. It's a vindictive energy, and retaliation and revenge is absolutely a Scorpio-themed event, right? So there's a lot more underneath the surface with this eclipse and activities occurring now than might be obvious on the surface. So keep that in mind when you're dealing with people. Maybe make amends where you can. Now, here's what's important also about this eclipse. If you look, right, so the moon obviously is the significant part of the eclipse. This moon is conjunct Jupiter in Taurus. Now, Jupiter is retrograde, so it makes it a little less easy to access that Jupiterian protective energy, but it is still there. And the moon is exalted in Taurus, right? So the moon loves being in Taurus. So the Moon-Jupiter conjunction gives us a saving grace, as it were. Keep that in mind. This will give us a saving grace in spite of all of this, wicked Scorpio, I'm going to get you kind of energy. I'm sorry, it's not funny, but I'm a little nervous. I'm just saying I'm a little nervous. Okay, now, during this eclipse, it's very limited in the aspects that it's making, which I thought was interesting, right? So we've got this eclipse here, right? So the Sun, Mercury, Mars, the warmongers, oh, I'm gonna get you. People seeking revenge and exacting revenge, that energy is very, very strong right now, okay? But at the same time, we've got this Moon-Jupiter conjunction, which helps heal and elevate us above that kind of low-level energy. And also, too, look at that. It's making a beautiful trine to Venus in Virgo, which is the position of a problem solver. So this suggests to me that right here, this Moon-Jupiter trining Venus as part of this eclipse absolutely gives us an opportunity to come up with some great problem solving here. So some long-standing issues could be fixed, could actually be fixed before this is over. It's not going to come easy because remember, Jupiter is retrograde, so we're going to have to work for this. We're going to have to really make the effort. But the solutions, the important thing is the solutions are in fact there without challenge. And we need that. We need to hear that right now. The other thing that's really good about this eclipse that I thought was interesting, right? So it's not taking a lot of hard, difficult aspects, which is fantastic. We don't need more. Literally, we're sitting on a bunch of dried kindling, and it would take only a spark to set things off. That's why everybody who's been paying attention is like, we're all drinking now. Okay. Now, the other thing that's important during this eclipse time, look at this. Saturn. I can't say enough good things about this Saturn. Saturn sets up a beautiful trine to these Scorpio planets on the eclipse and a sextile at the other end with those Taurus planets on the eclipse. Now, remember, look back and think, remember, as Saturn has been in Pisces, what has Saturn done? Saturn has literally served just desserts, right, or karmic rewards to a whole lot of people that really, really needed it, right? So a whole lot of people have been getting their comeuppance, as it were, under the Saturn and Pisces transit. And Pluto has been in Capricorn those last degrees, which we've said before is the cleanup crew. Pluto is here to finish the job, right? And Capricorn, its position in Capricorn, has a lot to do with power and big business and big corporations and leadership and old archaic ways of doing things, the air quotes establishment, right? The old guard, as it were. So Pluto passing through Capricorn in these late degrees is finishing up the job, and it is literally decimating all the weak, ineffective, toxic structures like toxic patriarchy, which we're witnessing right now, and just literally dissembling them and turning them upside down and making them go the wayside, go by the way of the dinosaur. As this has been happening when Saturn entered Pisces, because Pisces is the last sign of the zodiac and Saturn is the last planet of the physical experience. Remember, the only planets after Saturn are Uranus, Neptune, and Pluto, and those are outer planets. Those are meta planets. Our physical experience of the world as we individually experience them begins and ends with Saturn in the zodiac. Okay? Everything after that is mass evolution and a whole bunch of other stuff. So Saturn, being the last planet of our physical experience in the last sign of the zodiac, also brings this sense of finality to the events that we've been dealing with through this year. And now, so here's the thing I just want to say. When I say finality, finalness, I am not talking this end of the world nihilistic fantasy death wish some people seem to have. What I'm talking about is we are literally finally closing an evolutionary chapter, and we are about to enter a whole new world that's going to be better because we're not drowning and suffocating in things that don't work anymore. And as you've been watching and witnessing, look back for yourself, check back on your timelines. People who have been operating with less than full integrity, people who have been selfish, irresponsible, greedy, unfair, like all the things that violate the golden rule. Many of those people, if not all of them, have been getting their asses handed them on a platter, okay, in response to exactly those issues, right? So for those of you, as an example, who follow the celebrities, with the Markles, well, not the Markles, sorry, Prince Harry and Meghan, Saturn went into Pisces, and what has happened in this last year, like literally all that hinky PR stunt, like lying, manipulating stuff that typically everyone in Hollywood gets away with. That's why it works, right? And that's why they do it. Now suddenly can't catch a break because it literally their ass is being handed to them every time they turn around. Because the call to action, my friends, for all of us, listen carefully. The call to action right now with Saturn in Pisces and Pluto in those last degrees of Capricorn is to act with integrity, right? Gold star, golden rule levels of integrity. So for a lot of people, that's a whole new word for them. That's a whole new experience. But for those of you, and if you're watching the channel, you're probably one of these people. For those of you who understand the value and importance of character and integrity, this is the time to embrace that, because the only thing you're going to have to kind of weather through all of this sort of stuff. Remember, wrong is wrong. I don't care how you slice it. I don't care how you justify it. I don't care how you rationalize it. At the end of the day, some things are clearly wrong, right? And being excessive, going beyond the point where we're teaching someone a lesson and now we're just going into retaliating, that's where the line gets crossed and you've gone from necessary or necessary evil to wrong is wrong, and you shouldn't be getting any support for that at all. So there's that. Now, the other thing that's interesting about this eclipse is the outliers, those outer planets we were talking about, Uranus, Neptune, and Pluto. None of them are really in much aspect here, right? So try and get a different color on here. So Uranus is here, okay? And it is connecting to Neptune, right? And they're both connecting to Pluto. So while they're not making any significant aspects to the eclipse, they are triangulating amongst themselves. So Uranus, Neptune, and Pluto are all having a very strong aspect relationship with each other, which also says that what we're going through right now is part of an evolutionary process, and we're going to be okay. We can get to the other side, but we have to keep our eye on the prize. we have to remember that this is all part of a greater evolutionary process. Wrong is wrong. Okay, acting, living with the golden rule, acting as if character and integrity are the most important things in your life right now are the things that matter. Anything less than that, and you're going to get burned, right? Or you'll get your comeuppance, whichever it is that you need more. So this is actually a very, very good eclipse. So don't panic, my friends. I mean, be aware, be alarmed, and certainly pay attention, but don't panic. There's a way through this mess, but we have to make the effort to get there. For those of you who are looking at stuff in your personal life, what I would look for are anything involving the houses where you have, or planets, where you have Taurus and Scorpio in your natal chart. Look for things to be upended at this time, and also look for some inconvenient blessings. So one of the things that you may find is you may find yourself in situations where it's literally a blessing in disguise sort of thing, but mostly you're being given an opportunity to thread a needle or to find a solution, in a haystack full of not solutions. It's a little complicated, but it's going to be okay. Okay. Also, to look for substantial growth in the areas where you have houses or planets holding Taurus and Scorpio, and be aware that Taurus and Scorpio combined have everything to do with power, right? The acquisition of it, the use of it, the abuse of it, being the recipient of it. Power is the signature of this eclipse. Now, we do have, again, Saturn in Pisces, Jupiter's there with the eclipse. We've got Venus in Virgo trining it. We've got really good things here that suggest that with this power, or this, however this is manifesting, whether it's the pursuit of it, the acquisition of it, or the abuse of it, with this experience of power at this time, we have the opportunity to find remarkable solutions and levels of awareness that will lift us up and elevate us. So look for these planets in your chart. Expect some sudden and unexpected growth. Expect a lot of power in those areas of life. Use that power wisely, because if you don't, it will come back to bite you in a big way, and quickly. All right, so let's see what else I got going on. I did some research. I was trying to see when was the last time we had a Taurus eclipse. Well, lo and behold, we had a Taurus eclipse at 1 degree Taurus, very close to the eclipse degree we're on right now, in 1940. And do you know what happened in 1940, my friends? The Japanese bombed Pearl Harbor in Hawaii. Okay. And this is a very telling thing, and we're feeling kind of like a lot of that going on right now as well, that whole drum beats of war sort of thing, which is why everybody's on edge on top of everything else. But I'm here to tell you, history will not repeat itself. So the incidents of Pearl Harbor and the events leading up to it are more of an issue than the actual bombing. So let's take a look at what was going on that led up to Pearl Harbor. Now, here in the United States, just prior to 1940 and the Pearl Harbor bombing, we had just come through the Depression, and in like 1938, these socialist democrats, democratic socialists, the people who gave you unemployment and labor laws and all the things that protect you from being taken advantage of at work, these were very, very active. And in 1938, I think it was, the Fair Labor Standards Act was introduced. This act that was written into existence as a law determined that there should be a minimum wage, and it should be consistent throughout the industries, right? That you were limited to working a 40-hour week, and any more than that, and you should be compensated for that, and it should be optional, right? And also the reduction and or elimination of child labor, and certainly the elimination of child labor in dangerous environments. Because prior to 1938 and the Fair Labor Standards Act, you were all just serfs and slaves, back to work slave. So in short, and it's worth looking up. I strongly recommend you guys look this up and look at the timelines around this. So we're coming out of the Depression, right? We're trying to get our acts together. We're trying to make things right in the world, because wrong is wrong, right? So in 1938, the Fair Labor Standards Act guaranteed an employee minimum wage It limited the number of hours that you were required to work. So 40 hours was considered the work week, right? It also required additional compensation for additional hours worked. That's where your overtime comes from, because prior to this, there was no such thing as overtime. You just worked until they were done with you, or you dropped dead. And salary requirements have been updated 7 times since 1938 for the worker, not these CEOs. Okay, and for those of you who are not fans of unions, here's your reminder. Labor unions were in the vanguard of efforts to reduce or eliminate child labor. It's because of unions that you had a childhood, and it's because of unions that your grandchildren will not be working in factories for like $2 an hour because they can pay them less because they're kids. So thank a union. And because unions are people power. Power to the people, my friends, power to the people. Now, interestingly, while this is going on over on the other side of the world, Europe was having their own issues. Now, the thing to know about Hitler is Hitler came into popularity in Germany on an anti-feminist platform. I didn't know that, did you? Right? So Hitler's original campaigning had a lot to do with blaming women in the workforce for the economic woes of Germany, because Germany was really struggling as well economically. We were all going through it. So in his speeches and his campaigning, he blamed women in the workforce. Women need to be at home, like, having babies, raising babies, taking care of their men. That's why the economy is so bad. And people took it because, when you're struggling like that, you look for any scapegoat. And for people of limited intellect, that seems like the obvious answer, so it makes sense. So he rose to popularity on the anti-feminist platform once he was actively campaigning and in office. Just before that, then he was starting with the anti-Jew propaganda. So then it was not just the feminists, these women in the workforce. Now it's also those damn foreign Jews taking our businesses, running our banks, those money grubbers, blah, blah, blah. And of course, being fair-skinned, fair-haired, and of the Aryan race, which is the exact opposite of what you look like when you're Jewish, of course, made you the master race, and everyone should be submitting to us, and we have an identity that's more powerful. If it weren't for us, these people wouldn't exist. Blah. So Hitler took office in January 30th of 1933, and in less than 7 years, Hitler mounted a whole campaign. It basically turned the world upside down with a lot of anti-Semite, a lot of anti-everybody that's not us, but starting with the Jews. And that, of course, led to the Holocaust and World War II. So these things are happening at the same time. Here in the United States, we're dealing with our own monsters in the closet. And while we're trying to actively do the right thing, like introduce the Fair Employment Act, right, and labor unions and what the words I'm looking for, unemployment, and all these things, these workers' rights and protections, Hitler, on the other hand, is playing scapegoat and scapegoating Jews and women, and everybody else that's not them, as the reason that they're struggling. So he didn't actually offer solutions. He just offered someone to hate, and blame for all our problems. And if that sounds a little familiar to you, it's because literally the people who do this sort of stuff, they're not original, in case you haven't noticed. They copycat everything. I've yet to see anything original come out of them. So the playbook that Hitler and the Nazi movement used, they're literally following the same playbook word for word, because they clearly aren't creative or original enough to come up with something new. So that's also something interesting to be aware of. So all of this, of course, is leading to 1940 and the Pearl Harbor bombing. So these two things are happening separate from each other and simultaneously, in different parts of the globe. 1940 comes along, and then the next thing you know, out of nowhere, nobody saw this coming, the Japanese decided, let's go bomb Hawaii. So Japanese kamikaze pilots, or not the kamikaze, they came later, I think, but the Japanese came and bombed Pearl Harbor as an act of aggression towards the United States, because we had naval bases there. And they were doing that specifically because the U.S. had been aiding and assisting and in bed with basically the Chinese as far as Japan was concerned, and this was definitely something that was intended to hurt them. So they were striking back for our playing footsie with the Chinese against them up to this point. So yeah, so that's where Pearl Harbor came from. Now here's why this is important. the reason this is important is this was the tipping point that apparently led us into World War II, because when Japan bombed Pearl Harbor, Germany celebrated. Germany and Japan are allies. So the Germans and the Japanese didn't really have a lot of interest in each other, just like we didn't have a lot of interest in what was going on in Germany either. Not that much. We had our own problems. But the minute Japan bombed the Pearl Harbor in Hawaii and the U.S. naval base, Germany not only celebrated, but then decided to join Japan in its efforts and support them. So that became the beginning of this melee conflict that involved pretty much everybody at this point. Okay. And here we're going to talk about the astrology again. So for those of you who are history buffs, you're welcome to put your comments in the comment section. History is just a nice reminder of what we're not doing anymore. So I'm not going to get too deep into that. So here's the astrology that we're looking at. So in 1940, we had an eclipse at 1 Taurus. And right now in 2023, we have an eclipse at 5 Taurus. So these eclipses are right on top of each other. In 1940, the difference is that eclipse involved Saturn and was challenged by a T-square with Pluto in Leo. Right, so let's take a look at this. So here, Saturn right there with the sun as part of this eclipse. Now that's not good. That's ugly. That's really ugly, because Saturn is a planet of restriction, limitation, discipline, coldness, rigidity, lack of empathy or sympathy, lack of compassion. Oof. And Saturn was in Taurus, so this is very much about resources and money. So everybody was literally looking at how to save themselves financially. Okay? And apparently Germany was doing it by blaming everybody else for their problems. While this is happening, it was simultaneously setting up a T-square with Pluto in Leo. So when we talk about world domination during World War II, it literally was a literal attempt for world domination. With this particular T-square, which is gnarly as all get out, it's extremely difficult to find compromises or negotiations or diplomacy. Like it's just not going to happen, because remember, the Taurus-Scorpio axis, when activated, especially like this, is about power, raw power. With Pluto setting up a T-square to that eclipse and those signs representing power, now, because Pluto is power, right? Also raw power. Now we've got the whole underbelly of the beast exposed, and it's literally fighting to survive. So it's that kind of ugly with this T-square that we were having back in 1940. So the thing about it is also too, in 1940, like globally, we were all coming out of economic hardship in a big way. So everyone was trying to scramble to get themselves back on their feet. We were not in a very generous, loving time. And those are the times typically when people get the most selfish, right? So it was all around. This was the culmination of a decade of disaster, like economic disaster globally. And this was literally the crescendo in the music, where we had to make a decision and make a way and go. With this particular type of T-square, Saturn, Pluto, and the eclipse, right? This also indicates or suggests that this was a powerful, pivotal moment in time that had to happen, because the only way through the mountain was to blast a hole, because there was no going around it, over it, or under it. We had to go through it, and the only way you go through mountains is by blowing holes in them. Really violent, forcing yourself through a situation, as it were. Okay, so there's that. Now, fast forward to 2023. Well, my friends, this eclipse is at 5 Taurus. It's not that far from the one in 1940 that started World War II. That's enough to scare the bejesus out of anybody. But I'm here to tell you it's not going to be like that, and it doesn't have to be like that. That's not what is being demanded of us in terms of evolution right now. If you look, remember, this eclipse is now involving Jupiter, okay? And it is being supported by that Saturn. It's not taking a hard aspect, it's being supported by that Saturn. So the chance to stabilize and find a better way to take the higher road, to evolve in a less bloody conflict way, is definitely here upon us and possible. Okay, but Jupiter's retrograde. It won't come easy. You're going to have to work for it because they're not going to give it to you. Also, Pluto, which over here is part of the T-square, over here, it's not really doing anything. It's not involved in the eclipse at all. So we don't have to worry about this Plutonian emphasis of power and retribution and revenge as much as we did back in 1940, right? What this particular Pluto is doing is, remember, it sets up that sextile to Neptune, and you can't see it down here, but right there. It's also setting up a trine to Uranus. There's these really positive supported aspects with this Pluto, which is giving us a key hidden in this mess to make quantum leaps forward. So all of this begins and ends with consciousness, right? And our understanding of the world. You know, you can't expect a Neanderthal to understand how to drive a car and the importance of following traffic laws, because the cars don't make any sense to him. That's not part of his experience. And he's not evolved either physically in terms of his brain development or socially in terms of the world around him, understanding what a car is for. So everything becomes a matter of consciousness or awareness, what we understand about the world. People who are regressive and limited in their ability to think, really simple brain folks will, like children, grasp at things that are very obvious and very black and white, and it's, it's this or it's that, and that's it. Because that's all they can do. That's all they have the capacity to do. So, sometimes you'll see this a lot in conspiracy theorists too, right? There's not a whole lot of firepower under that hood, and conspiracy theories make them sound clever because now they feel like they know something you don't know. But when it comes to actual critical thinking and examining and really doing the work to understand the whole scope and context of things, that's when they get overwhelmed and they shut down and they don't want to hear it. Right? So I'm not a fan of conspiracy theories only because of what they're typically used for. So anyway, all of this is to say, my dears, is that the eclipse in 1940 is not the same eclipse as the one in 2023, not by a long shot. If anything, I would even venture to say that it's probably even different, like night and day. So where this eclipse literally dragged us into the bowels of hell in 1940, this one offers the opportunity to lift us up to the next level of existence that's not nearly so pathetic, I suppose. Whew. Okay, so let's see what else we got going on here. All right, and now we're just going to look at the eclipse by itself. Okay, so in this chart, I have the trans-Neptunians in here as well as the asteroids. Not really seeing a lot of use of the asteroids, but they're there, right? So the first thing I want to also point out, which is very promising, I'll get my little ink marker here. It's red. Okay. Is over here. Now remember, we talked about Scorpio and how Scorpio is very vindictive. Like, they're definitely an eye for an eye, a tooth for a tooth, and a pound of flesh for those sins. They will forgive you after they've exacted your punishment from you, the price that must be paid. Oh, Scorpio. So Scorpio has the capacity, absolute capacity, to make it its life mission to go to the bowels of hell and drag you down there with it, and pummel you to death down there and leave you, and then come back up to being a normal person. So this is not something we want to hear right now with all that's going on in the world around us, with Israel and Palestine and, oh dear God, right? So here's something I want you guys to hang on to. So the first thing is the sun is conjunct Apollon, the trans-Neptunian Apollon in Scorpio. So right now, money, no one is surprised, right? Money is a big issue right now, but also too, I would venture to say that it's more than just money, right? This has to do with commerce and business and different things for different players. But here in the United States, remember, we've had the biggest swell of labor and union movement in this country that we've seen since the 60s or the 70s, which is fantastic, right? Power to the people, because the people are the power. Listen, buddy, you wouldn't be making a profit if it weren't for the people making this stuff for you and the people buying it from you. Take care of your workers. Ooh, so Apollon has a lot to do with commerce and trade and merchants, right? So here in the United States, this big groundswell of labor movements, and also remember a lot of our politicians are funded by private groups that are basically, corporate money, the dark money sort of stuff. They would have a lot to say about encouraging these healthy, able-bodied people who are demanding better wages and better conditions to, I don't know, maybe find themselves being drafted into a war or something like that. Or certainly acting as distractions. They can get away with whatever people get away with when you're not looking. So I thought this was interesting only because it seems similar to what we just went through in the 1940 eclipse. Because remember, in 1938, we had to pass a law to tell people you can't put children in mines and dangerous environments. You cannot work people more than 40 hours. And if you do, you've got to pay them overtime for that. Yada, yada, yada. Basic common sense, humane things that treat people like people of value. They had just put that in before, they got involved in the Pearl Harbor bombing in the beginning of World War II. So here, it's a similar feel with the unions rising up in the last year or so, and now suddenly we've got a president who's, we're all in with whatever Israel decides to do, no matter what. We're all in, no matter what. It's the all in and no matter what part that kind of concerns me, but that's a whole other conversation. So there's something to be said for that. And we all know Joe Biden is absolutely a corporate hack, just like Kamala is. So there is that. Everybody's got different ideas about how to fix a problem, and unfortunately, when you're in bed with corporations, it's usually a very limited, predictable way of thinking that leads to specific solutions. Anyway, so there's that. Sorry, blah, blah, blah. Now, so that's promising, but telling. This is more telling than it is promising. Now, the other thing is, if we're looking right here, Mars is conjunct Poseidon. Now, it's a 40-degree orbit. I'll still take it because Poseidon also involves Jupiter, right? Because they're very close. So with Mars and Jupiter and Poseidon, this is excellent because Poseidon is a trans-Neptunian that represents the light. So it's Neptune without any negative qualities, as we're told. So it's the Christ energy, right? Or the whatever the energy is of angels that you would describe it as. So Neptune, or not Neptune, Jesus. Sorry. Poseidon is very much about the light, the spiritual light within everyone that is good and kind and compassionate, and does the right thing because it's the right thing to do. And this involved the Jupiter, which gives us some boots on the ground kind of energy. There's a lot of emphasis because Mars is action, right? There's a lot of emphasis on actions being taken to do the right thing that is compassionate and kind and wise and not coming from a place of hurt, hate, or retribution. That is very promising. We're seeing it, but the most important thing is we're going to see more of it because remember, these eclipses are in effect for about 6 months after they take place. So this whole movement towards, recognizing that wrong is wrong, and just because you've been a victim doesn't mean you get to hang on to that as your identity and your only identity in life. Sometimes you get to say you're a survivor and turn the other cheek, rise above it, sort of thing. We're going to see a lot more of this as the months roll by for the next 6 months. Now, the other thing is we've got Juno and trans-Pluto here, and they're pulling in that eclipse. Okay, so Juno and trans-Pluto has a lot with this particular eclipse is going to tell us a lot about community, believe it or not, community, and also humanity, right? Humanitarian efforts in communities. So we're going to be doing a lot more work with trauma and trauma-informed things, not just people in war zones, but across the board, right? In terms of how we can better serve our communities and our neighbors. By being more trauma-informed and how to help people move past that so that they're not living in an identity of victimhood, but living in an identity of survivorship, being a survivor of something and being able to move on and let go of that. So that should be nice to watch, right? Now, the things that I'm more concerned about, we also have, this is Zeus, Vulcanus. Ooh, sorry, Vulcanus. It's Vulcanus. We have Vulcanus in a T-square with this eclipse. So nuclear weapons, explosions that go boom in big ways are definitely going to be on the table for discussion as we get through the next 6 months. So military firepower, nuclear weapons, things that create a terrible and mighty force and show of strength will definitely be part of this eclipse activity. It doesn't mean it has to go to war. It doesn't mean that we have to live in that zip code, with threats of violence and all sort of stuff. But it does mean that is prominent and anchored into, like mixed into the batter. So it's something we're going to have to be aware of and deal with. Now, Vesta, right here, sets up beautiful supportive aspects to this eclipse, which also means that it gives us the opportunity to, my friends, do more informed and effective activism. So women, and this goes back to communities, because the women will get the job done. We're not trying to send our children off to get killed. Jesus, how much work it was just to have them in the first place. Their children are not dispensable. Anyway, with Vesta there setting up a sextile and a grand trine and a trine to that eclipse in Taurus Scorpio, this also again gives us an opportunity to find better ways to do things and streamline work things. So while all of this is going on, one of the things I would definitely look at moving forward for the next 6 months is much more engaged and effective conversations about work reforms, right? Work and labor reforms. So that's a good thing. That's a really good thing. And what else we got here? So we've got Cupido, which is also trining that moon Jupiter. So Cupido is going to give us communities, strong heart-centered communities, and a whole lot of communities banding together to try and do the right thing. So we may actually end up seeing a lot more unity from all 4 corners of the globe as a result of this eclipse and the activities happening right now than we have seen in a very long time, maybe even ever. And let's see, that's vertex. Not really worried about that. And that's it. So 5 at 11. 5 degrees. Oh, 5 degrees, right. Okay, so that is what we have, my friends. We're going to be okay. We're going to be okay. So things for this eclipse that I would look for while we're all on, hanging off the screen like a cat waiting for the other shoe to drop. 1, effective activism and problem solving is possible right now, but it's going to require organization, it's going to require discipline, and more importantly, it's going to require effort. It won't happen accidentally or naturally. We're going to have to make this work. The other is that there will be a rise in the unification of communities. So we may finally see more unity amongst communities across the globe in response to events happening right now than we've seen in a long time. We are on our way in the right direction. Honest to God, we are. But, we got to hang in there, keep our mind in the right place to get there, right? And also, because that, oh my gosh, that Poseidon is so awesome, right? So Poseidon with Mars is going to soften that Mars. So what would normally be a hair trigger temper with a finger on the nuclear button, right, is ameliorated right now. So there's more of an overwhelming push or drive or urge or instinct, whatever you want to call it, momentum. There's more momentum now to take the road of peace and higher, more compassionate things, and to stop and get out this nonsense, right? So some fundamental religions, people are really invested in fundamental or traditional religions, may be struggling for the next 6 months. Nobody's upset about that. As they learn to come to terms with the limitations and, any hate mongering that their religion has actually caused, because it's not the spirituality that's the problem. It's the teachings of the men in charge of the books, right? And if your religion makes you judgmental, then maybe there's something in your religion you should take a closer look at. Because if you're taking care of your own house, you're too busy to worry about your neighbors. And remember, friends, demons and demonic energy, chaos, suffering, and misery, anything that focuses on or results in, as an ultimate outcome, more chaos, misery, and suffering for other people or ourselves. That's the work of demonic forces. That's not the work of the light, right? And there's a whole bunch. I just want to say, and I'm just going to add this, and I'm going to be done, right? So there are apparently a whole bunch of people who've bought into this nihilistic fantasy that the world is going to come to an end. Oh, the world is coming to an end. And what's really sad is you'll hear other people like, well, I'm ready to go, blah blah blah. They're not very religious, but they're also not discounting the insanity of making those kinds of statements or buying into that kind of belief system. Well, I'm ready to go, blah blah blah. And here's what I would say. I was thinking about this earlier, right? So people will be very cavalier about dying. Oh, I can die tomorrow. I'm fine. Blah. I've done what I need to do. And typically it's always old people and very young, stupid people that say this. And yeah, people think that they're ready to die right up until the point that like they're gonna die. Then suddenly they change their mind and realize maybe I'm not quite so ready to die. Emergency room hospitals are full of people who thought they were ready to die and then realized at the last minute, no, maybe I'm actually not right now. So the thing about it is, when someone says or buys into these fantasies, these nihilistic fantasies about death, destruction, their death, the destruction of the world, the thing to remember is that the desire for death is not ever actually the desire for death. The desire for death is the desire for the pain to end. So when people will buy into this idea that somehow death is inevitable or the better option, or they're very cavalier about it, or they're even wishing it upon themselves, right? Or other people. What really is happening is they want the pain to go away. They don't actually want to die. So that's something to consider when you're talking to people who are reinforcing and promoting these stupid ideas about the end of the world, right? Because people who go to religion or those types of religions are going to those types of religions because they're in pain, right? And they're hoping that this religion will take their pain away. And their religion does, while at the same time telling them that ultimately it's all got to go. Everyone's got to go. Everyone must die. End of the world, nigh, kind of thing, because that will alleviate more of their suffering. And that's not it at all. That's not it at all. So, when you're talking to people like that, consider what's actually happening. What's really happening is, for some reason, somewhere inside themselves, there's a pain that they are struggling with that they don't know how else to get rid of. So if you can find the source of pain, you can find the source of healing. And maybe that's really what we all need to be doing right now, is examining ourselves and examining other people, and finding out where the hurt is and seeing how we can stop the hurt. All right, so here's to an eventful week with all these warmongers in office playing old man, I'm going to die soon anyway, so I'm taking everybody with me games. Bastards. If they had any idea how much work it is to have healthy freaking children, and how dangerous it is to us to be able to do that. It's not like you just go spit out puppies like a litter. They would be a lot more circumspect about sending our kids off to be killed, or worse, killing children. We live in the U.S. We still don't have any gun laws because the people who should be making these laws don't care about us. Their kids will be fine. So, yeah, it's got to stop. I know it's going to stop is if we pay attention and we start speaking up. All right, you guys, hang in there. Hang in there. There's a silver lining with this eclipse, but we're going to have to make it happen. It will not be given to us. All right, talk to you later. Bye.